The hunter cub said, "Humans fix what they love." The fleet started bringing what they missed. Part 1, the maintenance bay of Space Station. Fate 9 smelled like oil and hot metal. Daiho wiped his hands on a rag that was more grease than cloth. Around him, broken equipment covered every surface. A communications panel with a cracked screen. A gravity regulator missing half its components. A food processor that 3 different species had already declared dead. He picked up the food processor first. The Catherine who brought it yesterday had laughed at him. "Just recycle it," the alien had said, his cat-like features twisted in amusement. "Get a new one. Why waste time?" But Daiho never threw anything away if he could help it. His father had taught him that every machine had a story. Every scratch and dent meant something. This food processor had served on a ship for 15 years. It had fed crews through long journeys and difficult times. It deserved better than the recycling furnace. He opened the machine carefully. The problem was simple once he found it. A worn gear, stripped threads, nothing a little patience couldn't fix. He pulled out his tools and got to work. Outside the bay, the station buzzed with activity. Fate 9 was neutral ground where dozens of species met to trade and talk. Humans were still new here, still proving themselves to the older races. Most aliens thought humans were strange. They'd built things that broke too easily. They cried over damaged equipment. They kept fixing things that should be replaced. Daiho didn't care what they thought. He had a job to do. The door to the bay slid open. Daiho looked up and saw 3 small figures creeping inside. Catherine cubs, no taller than his waist, with golden fur and huge curious eyes. Behind them stood Velsara, one of the senior Catherine officers. Her dark fur was streaked with gray, and her eyes were sharp as knives. "Uncle Daiho!" the smallest cub squeaked. They had been visiting the station for a week now, learning about other species. Somehow, they had decided Daiho was their favorite human. "Cubs," Velsara said firmly. "We should not disturb the engineer while he works." "But we want to watch," another cub said. "Please, Aunt Velsara." Velsara sighed but nodded. The cubs rushed forward, climbing onto stools to see Daiho's workbench better. They watched in silence as he worked on the food processor, their tails swishing with excitement. "Why do you fix old things?" the smallest cub finally asked. "My teacher says humans do this all the time. She says it's weird." Daiho smiled. "Well, this machine still works. It just needs help. Throwing it away would be wasteful." "But getting a new one is faster," the cub argued, echoing what every adult had told him. "Maybe," Daiho admitted. "But this one has history. It's been places, done things. It deserves respect." The cubs looked at each other, confused but fascinated. Velsara watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. 3 days later, Velsara returned alone. This time, she carried something wrapped in dark cloth. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a weapon. It was beautiful, with intricate engravings along the barrel and a grip worn smooth by generations of hands. "This was my grandmother's," Velsara said quietly. "And her grandmother's before that. It has been in my family for 200 years. Daiho took the weapon gently. "What happened to it?" "The firing mechanism failed during a demonstration for the cubs yesterday. I was showing them our family's history." Velsara's ears drooped slightly. "I will retire it with honor. Our tradition says a weapon that fails in demonstration must be put to rest." But it can be fixed," Daiho said, examining the mechanism. "This part here, it's just worn down. I can repair it." Velsara shook her head. "Our way is different from yours, Daiho. We do not cling to broken things. We honor them and move forward. What do the cubs think?" "They said I should bring it to you?" Velsara's whiskers twitched. "They have been watching you work all week. They said humans fix what they love, and that maybe love is better than tradition." Daiho looked at the weapon in his hands. He could see where it had been dropped, fired, cleaned thousands of times. Every mark told a story. "Give me 3 days," he said. Velsara started to argue, then stopped. She looked at him for a long moment. 3 days, she agreed. Daeho worked through the nights. The weapon was old, but it was also incredibly well made. The Kethrin might not fix things, but they built them to last. He cleaned every part, replaced the worn components, even fabricated a new firing pin to match the original design. He was careful not to remove any of the engravings or smooth away the worn patches. Those were part of the weapons story. On the third day, Velsara returned with the cubs. Daeho handed her the weapon. She checked it carefully, then aimed at the testing range in the corner of the bay. The weapon fired perfectly, the same way it had for 200 years. Velsara said nothing. She just stared at the weapon in her hands. "You fixed it," the smallest cub shouted. "We knew you would." "How much do I owe you?" Velsara asked, her voice rough. "Nothing," Daeho said. "Things with history deserve to keep living. It was my honor to help." Velsara looked at him with something new in her eyes. Respect, maybe. Or understanding. "The cubs were right about you," she said. "Humans fix what they love. Even when the thing is not yours, you still love the story it carries." After they left, Daeho went back to his workbench. He didn't know it then, but word was already spreading through the Kethrin fleet. The officer Velsara, known for her strict adherence to tradition, had broken protocol. She had kept a failed weapon. She had let a human repair it, and she was glad she did, the cubs told everyone who would listen. Their human friend didn't just fix machines. He fixed memories. He fixed connections to the past. Maybe, they said to their teachers and parents, humans understood something important. Maybe throwing everything away wasn't strength. Maybe keeping things alive was its own kind of courage. The older Kethrin dismissed this as cub talk, foolish thoughts from youngsters who didn't understand the warrior way. But some of them remembered the weapons and tools they had thrown away over the years. They remembered the ships they had scrapped, the equipment they had replaced without a second thought, and they wondered Dot in his maintenance bay. Daeho picked up the next broken item, a ship's chronometer damaged in a fight. The owner had already ordered a replacement, but asked if Daeho wanted to try fixing it anyway. "For practice," the owner had said. Daeho smiled and got to work. He didn't know he was starting a revolution. He was just doing what felt right, one repair at a time. The hunter cub said, "Humans fix what they love." The fleet started bringing what they missed part 6 months after the weapon incident. Heinwu stepped off the transport and onto the Kethrin flagship Talon's Pride. The ship was massive, all sharp angles and dark metal. It smelled different from human ships, cleaner, colder, like a weapon, kept perfectly maintained but never loved. Ji-1 followed behind him, carrying cases of equipment. She was the archaeologist, he was the cultural liaison. Together, they were supposed to help the Kethrin and humans understand each other better. Heinwu wasn't sure how that was supposed to work, but Commander Velsara had personally requested them. That had to mean something. Velsara met them in the docking bay. She was taller than Hyun-Woo remembered from the files. Her presence filled the space around her. "Welcome to Talon's Pride," she said. "I trust your journey was acceptable?" "It was fine, Commander. Thank you for having us." "I have heard humans are good at keeping things alive," Velsara said. "I want to see if this is true for more than just machines." She led them deep into the ship, down corridors that grew older the further they went. Finally, they reached a large cargo hold. When the doors opened, both humans stopped and stared. The hold was filled with pieces of history. Weapons lay stacked in careful rows. Armor hung on racks, dented and scarred. Pieces of destroyed ships were organized by battle and date. Everything was labeled, catalogued, stored with military precision. "This is our battle record," Velsara explained. "Every significant fight, every lost warrior, every ship that fell defending the fleet. We keep pieces to remember." One walked forward slowly, her eyes wide. She picked up a helmet, traced the deep gouge across its face. "This saved someone's life," she whispered. "Yes, the warrior Tekshar 80 years ago. He survived that battle and served for 30 more years." "You know the story," Heinwu said. "But do your people?" Velsara's ears flicked. "It is in the records. Anyone can access them. But do they? Ji-won asked. She was still holding the helmet, turning it in her hands. When was the last time someone came down here and really looked at these things? Velsara was quiet for a moment. We do not dwell on the past. We honor it and move forward. What if you could do both? Han-woo asked. What if this wasn't just storage? What if it was a museum? The word didn't translate well into Catherine. Velsara as translator struggled with it. Han-woo tried to explain. A place where history lives, where people come to see and touch and remember. Not just data and computers, but real things that tell real stories. Why? Velsara asked. What purpose does this serve? Ji-won set down the helmet carefully. Because history isn't just facts. It's feelings. It's connections. When you touch something real, something that was there, it changes how you understand what happened. Velsara thought about her grandmother's weapon, now back on her hip where it belonged. She thought about how the cubs had looked at it, knowing it was fixed, knowing it was loved. Show me, she said. For the next month, Han-woo and Ji-won transformed the cargo hold. They didn't just organize the artifacts. They made them tell stories. Each piece got a display with context. Who used it? What battle? What happened? They added pictures when they could find them. They even tracked down veterans who had been there and recorded their memories. The Catherine crew watched with confusion at first. Some thought it was silly. Others were curious. A few offered to help, sharing stories they remembered about old battles and fallen friends. Then Ji-won found the shuttle. It was in the lower cargo bay, marked for recycling. An old combat shuttle, barely holding together. The record said it was from the Battle of Kreshven 40 years ago. That battle was famous among the Catherine. They had been outnumbered 5-1. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. This shuttle, Ji-won said to Velsara. It says here that it carried Commander Rokenash during the final assault. He died in it. Velsara went very still. Rokenash was my mentor. He taught me everything about command. He saved the fleet that day. Then why is this being thrown away? It is just metal. The memory is what matters. But memory fades, Han-woo said gently. Metal lasts. Stories last longer when they have something real to hold on to. Velsara looked at the shuttle for a long time. It was damaged, burned, barely recognizable as something that had once flown. But she could see where Rokenash had sat. She could imagine his hands on the controls, his voice calling orders, his final moments saving them all. Fix it, she said. Commander? Not to fly, but to remember. Show me how humans keep things alive. The restoration became a ship-wide event. Veterans who had served with Rokenash came to help. They shared stories while they worked. The time he had made a joke during a tense negotiation. The way he always checked on the youngest crew members. How he had looked when he made the decision to fly that final assault, knowing he probably wouldn't return. The cubs from the station. Now young trainees on the fleet helped polish the hull. They listened to the stories with wide eyes. These weren't just facts from the computer. These were real memories from real people about a real hero. When they placed the shuttle in the museum, Velsara held a ceremony. Not the traditional Catherine ceremony for the dead. Something new. A celebration of memory kept alive. Rokenash lives in our records, she told the assembled crew. But now he lives here too. When we forget how to read, when computers fail, when centuries pass, this shuttle will still be here. And anyone who sees it will know that someone brave sat here once. Someone who mattered. Someone who saved us all. After the ceremony, young Catherine, who had never been to the museum before, started visiting. They touched the artifacts carefully. They read the stories. They asked the veterans questions. The cargo hold became a living place, not just a storage room. Han-woo found Velsara there late one night. She was standing in front of the shuttle, her hand on its scarred hull. The cubs were right, she said without turning around. Humans fix what they love. But I am learning that fixing can mean many things. You did not just repair this shuttle. You repaired my connection to Rokenash. You fixed something I did not know was broken. We only showed you what was already there, Hyunwoo said. The love, the memory, the importance. You just needed to see it differently. Velsara nodded slowly. My people have been throwing away more than old equipment. We have been throwing away pieces of ourselves. Every time we recycled something with history, we lost part of that story. It's not too late to start keeping them. No, Velsara agreed. It is not too late. Word of the museum spread through the Kethrin fleet like fire. Other ships started asking questions. Could they do this too? Could they turn their storage holds into places of memory? Could they learn to fix instead of replace, to keep instead of discard? Velsara sent reports to the fleet command. She included pictures of the museum. She included testimony from crew members about improved morale and stronger unit cohesion. She included something more important. She told them how it felt to touch her mentor's shuttle and remember why she had become a commander in the first place. The reports were read, discussed, debated. The older commanders were skeptical. But the younger ones, the ones who had served with humans, understood. Change was coming to the Kethrin fleet. Slowly, carefully, one preserved memory at a time. And it all started because two humans believed that history deserved to be more than data in a computer dot. It deserved to be loved. The hunter cub said, humans fix what they love. The fleet started bringing what they missed. Part 3. The Council of Claws met in a room that had witnessed 2 centuries of military decisions. 12 senior commanders sat in a circle, their collective experience representing over 400 years of service. Today, they were discussing something that had never come before them in all that time, a request to stop throwing things away. Commander Velsara stood in the center of the circle, calm despite the weight of their attention. She had brought data, reports, testimony from dozens of ships. But she knew the real argument wasn't in the numbers. It was in the story. The humans have a saying, she began. They say that how you treat your tools shows how you treat yourself. For generations, we Kethrin have practiced efficiency. When something breaks, we replace it. When a ship grows old, we recycle it and build new. We thought this was wisdom. It is wisdom, one of the older commanders interrupted. Resources are finite. Time is valuable. Why waste either on maintaining when replacement is faster? Because we are not replacing objects, Velsara said. We are replacing our own history. Every ship we scrap, every weapon we discard, every piece of equipment we throw away takes a piece of our story with it. The humans showed me this. They taught me that preservation is not weakness. It is memory made solid. The council listened as she described the museum on Talon's Pride. She showed them images of young Kethrin touching artifacts, reading stories, connecting with their heritage in ways the computer records never achieved. She told them about crew morale improvements, about increased re-enlistment rates, about veterans finding purpose in sharing their experiences. 3 ships have already implemented similar programs, Velsara continued. All report the same results. Our people are not just soldiers. They are inheritors of a legacy. When we let them touch that legacy, they become better warriors, better crew members, better Kethrin. Pretty words, another commander said. But we face practical problems. Fleet maintenance already strains our resources. You are asking us to spend more time and money keeping old things alive instead of building new ones. I am asking us to learn from the humans. And I am not alone. Velsara activated a display. Dozens of formal requests appeared, each from different ships across the fleet. Junior officers, senior crew members, even civilians attached to military vessels, all asking the same thing. They wanted to learn how to preserve, how to maintain, how to keep their ships and equipment running for decades. Instead of just using them until they broke, the council chamber fell silent. This wasn't just one commander's strange idea anymore. This was a movement. Ambassador Jaesung arrived at the Kethrin Central Command 3 weeks later. He brought a team of specialists, but the most important was Dian. She was a chief engineer, but more than that, she was a teacher. She had spent 20 years training new, Human engineers and the philosophy of maintenance and care, the Council had agreed to a trial program. 10 ships would receive human engineering teams. Those teams would not just repair. They would teach. Show the Kethrin how to prevent problems instead of just fixing them after they occurred. How to upgrade and modify instead of replacing. How to build relationships with their equipment that went beyond simple utility. Yun met with the Kethrin engineers in a large workshop. They sat in rows, all wearing their maintenance uniforms, all looking skeptical. She didn't blame them. She was asking them to change everything they had learned. You already know how to build, Dayan said. Your construction is excellent, but building and maintaining are different skills. Today I want to teach you how to make your ships last forever. Nothing lasts forever, a Kethrin engineer called out. Metal fatigues. Systems degrade. This is basic physics. You're right. But with proper care, ships can last centuries. Humans have vessels that are 400 years old, still flying, still serving. Not because we have better technology, because we care for them better. She showed them techniques they had never considered. Predictive maintenance that caught problems before they became failures. Modification systems that allowed old components to accept new technology. Upgrade paths that kept ships current without requiring complete rebuilds. But more than the technical knowledge, she taught them attitude. Every time you touch your ship, you should be listening, Yoon explained. Feeling for the small vibrations that mean something is wearing down. Noticing the slight changes in sound that indicate developing problems. Your ship talks to you constantly. You just need to learn its language. The Kethrin engineers practiced on an old fighter that had been scheduled for recycling. It was 70 years old, damaged in a dozen battles, considered beyond economic repair. Daeun's team worked alongside the Kethrin, showing them how to approach each system with respect and patience. This power coupling is original, a young Kethrin engineer named Teo said. It has been replaced on every other ship of this class. Why is it still working? Because someone cared for it, Dayan replied. She showed him the maintenance logs. The same engineer had checked this coupling every week for 40 years. Small adjustments, careful cleaning, preventive replacements of stress components before they failed. This engineer loved his ship. He treated it like family, and the ship responded by lasting. Teo ran his claws carefully over the coupling. He could feel the difference now. This wasn't just a part. It was evidence of dedication, of caring, of love made practical. Over the following months, the program expanded. More human engineers arrived. More Kethrin learned. But something unexpected happened. The Kethrin didn't just learn to maintain their ships. They started to care about them in new ways. Engineers gave their ships names. Crews developed traditions around maintenance routines. Veterans began recording their experiences with particular vessels, creating oral histories that supplemented the dry technical logs. The ships themselves seemed to respond, running more smoothly, breaking down less frequently, lasting longer than projections said they should. Velsara toured the ships in the program and saw the change everywhere. In a repair bay, she watched a Kethrin engineer carefully preserve the original hull plates of a ship instead of replacing them with new ones. The engineer explained that these plates had been through 30 battles. They had earned their place on another ship. She found a crew holding a ceremony for their vessel's 100th year of service. 100 years. In the old way, the ship would have been recycled decades ago. Now it was being honored, celebrated, loved. The humans have given us more than technical knowledge, Velsara reported to the council. They have given us back something we lost long ago. The understanding that our tools and vessels are not just objects. They are companions, partners, they deserve our respect and care. The council voted to expand the program fleet-wide. Every ship would receive training. Every engineer would learn the new methods. It was a massive undertaking, but the results were undeniable. Maintenance costs were actually decreasing as prevention replaced reaction. Ship lifespans were extending dramatically. And perhaps most importantly, The Kethrin themselves were happier. Ambassador Jae-sung stood with Valsara on the observation deck of Talon's Pride, watching the ships of the fleet arranged in formation. "Your people are natural learners," he said. "Yun tells me the Kethrin engineers are already improving on our techniques." "We are combining our ways," Valsara replied, "taking the best of human care and Kethrin precision, creating something new that belongs to both our species." The cubs would be proud. Valsara's whiskers twitched in amusement. "Those cubs are young officers now. They have requested assignments to ships in the program. They want to be part of this change. Because humans fix what they love? Because we are learning to love what we should have been fixing all along." The fleet was changing, not just in how they maintained their ships, but in how they saw themselves. They were not just warriors moving from battle to battle. They were inheritors of a legacy, carriers of history, keepers of stories written in metal and memory. And it had all started because one human engineer had refused to throw away a broken weapon. The hunter cubs said, "Humans fix what they love." The fleet started bringing what they missed. Part 4 Outpost. Whisper sat on a dead moon at the edge of Kethrin territory. Nothing grew there. Nothing lived there except the 50 soldiers who rotated through on 2-year assignments. It was a listening post, important for security but brutal on the soul. The walls were gray. The sky through the viewports was black. The only sound was the hum of life support and the occasional beep of scanning equipment. Tae-min had been there 3 months, and he could already see what it was doing to the Kethrin soldiers. They did their jobs perfectly. Kethrin discipline was legendary, but their eyes were empty. They moved through their routines like machines, efficient but lifeless. During his first week, Tae-min had asked one of them if they were okay. "We serve," the soldier had replied. "Comfort is not required." But Tae-min was human. Comfort might not be required, but he believed it should be available. He had seen what happened to humans in places like this: depression, burnout, mistakes born from exhaustion and despair. The Kethrin might be tougher, but they weren't immune. He started with the observation deck. It had been designed as a backup command center but was rarely used. The space was large, with windows overlooking the moon's barren surface. It was meant to be functional. Tae-min decided to make it more. He requisitioned supplies, calling in favors from human ships passing through the sector. Lights that could mimic natural sunrise and sunset. Comfortable seating that wasn't just efficient chairs. A sound system that could play something other than alert tones. And most importantly, he contacted Subin, a botanist working on a research station 3 jumps away. "You want what?" Subin asked over the comm. "Plants. Whatever you can spare. Things that are hard to kill and don't need much light." "For Outpost Whisper?" "Tae-min, that place is famous for being awful." "Why waste resources making it pretty?" "Because 50 soldiers are slowly dying inside and no one seems to care." Subin was quiet for a moment. "I'll send you a shipment, but I'm also coming with it. I want to see this." The plants arrived 3 weeks later. Hardy ferns bred for space stations. A small tree that grew well under artificial light. Flowering vines that could survive on minimal water. Subin came with them, curious about what Tae-min was planning. The Kethrin soldiers watched with confusion as Tae-min and Subin transformed the observation deck. They installed the new lighting system, programmed to follow a 26-hour cycle that matched Kethrin's circadian rhythms. They arranged the plants carefully, creating small islands of green in the gray space. Tae-min even built a small fountain using recycled water from the life support system, the sound of running water filling the silence. "This serves no tactical purpose," the outpost commander said. Her name was Hana, and she had been here for 18 months. She looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "No tactical purpose," Tae-min agreed. "But maybe it serves a different purpose. We are here to watch the border, not to admire plants. Can you do both?" Hannah stared at him. Then she looked at the observation deck. The soft golden light. The green leaves. The sound of water. Her ears, which had been flat against her head since Tae-min arrived, slowly lifted. We will see, she said. For the first week, no one used the space. The soldiers passed by, glancing in with curiosity, but never entering. They had been trained that comfort was weakness. Relaxation was indulgence. Duty came before everything else. Then one night, Taemin found a young soldier sitting in the observation deck. She was just sitting, staring at the fountain, tears running down her furred cheeks. "Are you okay?" Taemin asked softly. "I don't know," the soldier whispered. "I came here because my quarters felt too small. I thought I would look at the stars for a minute, but then I heard the water and I remembered my home world. We had a stream near our training grounds. I used to sit by it after difficult days. Do you want me to leave?" "No, I think I need to remember that I am more than just a soldier." Word spread quietly. Soldiers started coming to the observation deck during their off hours. They sat in silence, listening to the water. They touched the plants carefully, fascinated by living things that grew without purpose except to grow. Some brought books. Others just sat and thought. Hannah found Taemin in the maintenance bay one evening. "The off-duty violation reports have dropped 70%, she said. "What kind of violations?" "Minor things. Soldiers getting into arguments, sleeping through shifts, small acts of rebellion against the monotony." Hannah's tail swished slowly. "They have stopped since you built that room. It's just a room with plants and nice lighting." "No, it is more than that." Hannah struggled to find the words. "We Catherine have always believed that strength means enduring hardship without complaint. That beauty and comfort make warriors soft. But I am watching my soldiers become more focused, more alert, more present in their duties since they started using that space. They are better warriors because they have a place to stop being warriors for a few hours. You should use it too. I am the commander. I must be stronger." "Being strong doesn't mean suffering more," Taemin said. "Sometimes being strong means knowing when you need to rest." Hannah visited the observation deck that night. She sat by the fountain for 2 hours, the first time she had truly relaxed in 18 months. When she returned to duty, her officers noticed the difference immediately. Her decisions were sharper. Her patience was longer. She was still the same disciplined commander, but the weight on her shoulders seemed lighter. Subin extended her stay, fascinated by the changes she was seeing. She started teaching interested soldiers about the plants, how to care for them, how to propagate them, why they grew the way they did. A few soldiers asked if they could have small plants in their quarters. Soon, green was appearing throughout the outpost, tiny rebellions against the gray walls. One soldier started drawing. She had never drawn before, but something about the plants made her want to capture their shapes. Her sketches were rough at first, but she kept practicing. Other soldiers asked to see her work. Some asked her to draw other things. The mess hall began displaying her art. Another soldier, a veteran with 20 years of service, started playing music. Just simple melodies on a small instrument he had kept hidden in his belongings. He said music was considered frivolous in his training. But here, in this place, it felt necessary. Others gathered to listen during their breaks. Commander Velsara visited Outpost Whisper 6 months after Taemin's arrival. She came to inspect the post, expecting to find the usual grim efficiency. Instead, she found soldiers who smiled, who laughed during their meals, who had turned a listening post into something approaching a home. She found Taemin in the observation deck, helping a soldier repot a plant that had grown too large for its container. "What have you done here?" Velsara asked. "I fixed what was broken." "Nothing was broken. The post functions perfectly." "The equipment functioned perfectly," Taemin corrected. "The people were breaking. Little by little. You just couldn't see it." Velsara watched a group of soldiers enter the observation deck. They greeted each other warmly, settled into their favorite spots, and simply existed for a while. Not as warriors, not as soldiers. Just as people who needed beauty and peace and the sound of running water. "We never thought to do this," Velsara said quietly. "In all our history, we never thought our warriors needed anything but duty." "Everyone needs more than duty," Subin said, joining them. Humans learned that the hard way. We had wars where soldiers broke not from fighting, but from having no reason to fight. No beauty to defend. No joy to return to. We learned that warriors need to remember what they're protecting. And what are they protecting? This, Taman said simply, gesturing to the observation deck. Life, growth, beauty, peace, all the things that make existence worth the effort. Velsara submitted her report to Fleet Command. Re-enlistment rates at Outpost Whisper had tripled. Duty performance had improved across all metrics. Mental health assessments showed dramatic improvements. And perhaps most telling, soldiers who left the outpost now requested to return. A posting that had been considered punishment had become desirable. The report included a single recommendation. Every outpost, every ship, every Kethrin facility should have spaces like this. Not just functional areas, but places where soldiers could remember they were alive. The Council approved the recommendation. They sent requests to Human Command. Not for engineers this time. For botanists, artists, musicians, designers. People who understood that survival wasn't enough. That beauty and joy and peace were not weaknesses, but reasons to be strong. The Cub's words echoed through the Kethrin fleet once more. Humans fix what they love. And now the Kethrin understood that they had been broken in ways they never recognized. Not their equipment, not their ships, but their souls, their connection to beauty, their understanding that warriors needed more than battles to be whole.T-min. Watch the sunset program begin in the observation deck, painting the walls with orange and gold. Around him, Kethrin soldiers sat in peace, surrounded by green growing things. Listening to the eternal sound of water finding its way home, he had fixed what was broken. Not with tools or technical knowledge, but with the simple understanding that everyone. The hunter cub said, "Humans fix what they love." The fleet started bringing what they missed. Part 5. The archive of shared memory hung in space at the border between human and Kethrin territory. A station built by both species together. Its design was unique, blending human curves with Kethrin angles, creating something that belonged to neither culture alone. It had taken 5 years to build and 20 years to fill. Now it was ready to open. Deho stood in the main hall, leaning on a cane he pretended he didn't need. He was old now, his hair white and his hands shaking slightly. But he had insisted on being here for the opening. This place existed because he had fixed one weapon 40 years ago. Because he had refused to throw away something with history. Beside him, Velsara looked older too. Her fur was more gray than black, and she moved with the careful precision of someone whose joints hurt more than they used to. But her eyes were still sharp, still missing nothing. "I cannot believe this is real," she said, looking around the vast space. "When the Cubs first spoke those words, I thought it was just child talk. I never imagined it would lead to this." "Children see clearly," Deho replied. "They haven't learned to ignore what's important yet." The hall was filling with people. Kethrin officers in dress uniforms. Human dignitaries. Engineers from both species. Artists, musicians, botanists, historians. And most importantly, the young people. Students from Kethrin worlds and human colonies, gathered to see what their peoples had built together. Among the crowd, Deho spotted familiar faces. The Cubs, now commanders in their own right. They had brought their own children to see the archive. A full generation had grown up knowing that preservation was valuable, that history was worth keeping, that beauty had its place alongside strength. One of those commanders approached. His name was Young Su, and he had been the smallest cub back on Space Station Fate 9. Now he was tall and confident. His uniform decorated with honors from a dozen campaigns. "Engineer Deho," Young Su said formally. "My children wanted to meet you." Two young Kethrin stepped forward, barely older than Young Su had been when this all started. They looked at Deho with wide eyes. "You are the one who fixed things," the smaller one said. "Father tells the story often, about the weapon and the lesson." "I just did my job," Deho said. "Your father and his siblings were the ones who understood what it meant. Will you show us your toolkit?" the other cub asked. Father says it is in the archive now, part of the display. I'd be honored. The ceremony began with speeches. Human Ambassador Jae-sung spoke about cooperation and shared values. A Kethran admiral discussed how maintenance philosophy had changed their entire fleet. But the most important speaker was Beora, the human architect who had designed the archive. 20 years ago, Beora said. Her voice carrying through the hall, two species began learning from each other. Not just technical knowledge, but philosophy, understanding, we taught the Kethran to preserve and maintain. They taught us the value of discipline and honor. Together, we created something neither species could have built alone. She gestured to the displays surrounding them. Ships from both species, some human, some Kethran, all preserved perfectly. The combat shuttle from the Battle of Kreshvan held a place of honor, surrounded by smaller artifacts from that same fight. Velsara's grandmother's weapon was there too, behind protective glass but still visible, still telling its story. This archive is not a museum in the old sense, Beora continued. It is not a place where things go to die. It is where they continue to live, where they continue to teach, where they continue to connect us to our history and to each other. The crowd moved through the halls as the ceremony concluded. The archive was huge with different sections for different types of history. Military equipment. Personal items. Art created by soldiers during the integration years. Tools used by the engineers who had taught the Kethran new techniques. But the most striking section was the newest one. The Hall of What Was Found. This hall displayed something unexpected. Kethran art from before the integration. Music recordings from centuries ago. Poetry, paintings, sculptures. All things the Kethran had created long ago and then abandoned as their culture became more focused on martial excellence. These pieces had been found in old storage facilities, forgotten archives, personal collections of families who had kept them hidden. Now they were displayed proudly. Evidence that the Kethran had always had artists. They had just forgotten to value them. G-1. The archaeologist who had helped create the first museum on Talon's Pride stood in front of a painting. It was 300 years old, created by a Kethran warrior during a long campaign. It showed a battle, but also the sunrise after, the wounded helping each other, the moment of peace after violence. This is what they lost, Jaewon said to the students gathered around her. Not the ability to create beauty, but the permission to value it. The integration with humans didn't teach them something new. It reminded them of something they had forgotten. In the workshop section of the archive, something remarkable was happening. Young Kethran and humans worked side by side on restoration projects. They were learning together, sharing techniques, arguing good-naturedly about the best way to preserve a damaged piece of hull plating or restore an old engine component. Among them was Minna, a young Kethran who had been born after the integration. She had never known a time when her people threw everything away. For her, preservation was normal. Maintenance was expected. Beauty was valued. Why do you think the old Kethran stopped making art? A human student asked her. Considered the question. I think they were afraid. After losing big battles, they focused only on being stronger. They thought anything that did not make them better warriors was weakness. They forgot that warriors need reasons to fight beyond just winning. And now? Now we know better. We are still warriors, still strong. But we also know that strength means protecting beautiful things, not just destroying enemies. We know that what we love is what we fight for. Velsara found Daeho sitting on a bench in front of a special display. It showed the toolkit he had used to fix her grandmother's weapon. Each tool was labeled with the repairs it had made over the years. Hundreds of fixes, thousands of small acts of preservation. How does it feel? Velsara asked, sitting beside him. To see what you started? Strange, Daeho admitted. I was just doing what felt right. I never meant to change anything. The best changes often start that way. Small acts of kindness. Simple refusals to accept waste. One fixed weapon became a philosophy that transformed two species. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the young people work and learn. The archive hummed with life around them. Not the sterile preservation of a tomb, but the active engagement of a place where history lived and breathed. "The cubs were right," Deho said finally. "Humans do fix what they love. But you taught us something too. You taught us that sometimes, in the act of fixing, we discover what deserves love. I fixed your weapon because it had history. But the real fix was helping you see that history was worth keeping, and you helped my people see that we had lost more than we realized. Not just objects, but the joy of creating them, the peace of maintaining them, the connection they provided to our past and to each other." A Catherine child ran past them, laughing, chasing a human friend through the halls. A museum guard called after them to be careful, but without real anger. Even here, in this place of preservation, life was allowed to happen. Dapaora approached them, a tablet in her hands. "The dedication is ready. Would you like to see it before we make it official?" Velsara and Deho read the words together. "This archive stands as proof that what we love, we preserve. What we preserve, we understand. What we understand, we can share." Two species met in the simple act of fixing a broken weapon and discovered they could fix more than objects. They could fix assumptions, repair misunderstandings, restore connections that had been lost. This place is not an ending, but a beginning. Every item here is a promise to the future. We will remember. We will maintain. We will love what came before as we build what comes next. "It's perfect," Deho said, his voice rough with emotion. The dedication was carved into the main entrance. Words in both human and Catherine languages, visible to everyone who entered. The archive opened officially the next day, and ships from across both territories came to visit. Veterans brought items for the collection. Young people came to learn. Artists found inspiration in the preserved history. But perhaps the most important visitors were the families. Catherine parents bringing their children to see the tools their grandparents used. Human families showing their kids the ships their ancestors flew. Everyone connecting to history, understanding their place in the long chain of people who came before and would come after. On Deho's last night at the archive, he walked the halls alone. His cane tapped softly on the floor as he passed displays of ships and weapons, tools and art. All the accumulated memory of two species learning to value the same things. He stopped at a new section, just opened that day. It was called Tomorrow's History. This section was empty except for a single plaque. What we create today will be history tomorrow. What will we preserve? What will we love? The choice, as always, is ours. Deho smiled.